Good morning. I'd like to talk about Jesus as a human being with the help of a devotional from my favorite Bible application YouVersion, which I have on my phone. It's a beautiful app in case you're interested. It has all different devotionals, all different translations of the Bible, easily searched by topic that you want to look at or learn about. It's a wonderful application. But what astounds me is Jesus as a man. He was incarnate, born of the Virgin Mary. He had a physical body just like me, a brain in his head just like me, and that subject him to the emotions and feelings just like I have. And we know he had these feelings. When he was in the temple, driving out the sellers and traders in the temple, he made a whip and was whipping the way. He was angry. He wasn't waltzing through there saying, "Oh, please get out." He was literally whipping them out of the temple. "Get out of my Father's house." When he cursed the fig tree on his way to Jerusalem, that was anger, a real emotion. When he cried at Lazarus' death, he wasn't crying at the death of Lazarus. He had planned it. He delayed going. When he was told that Lazarus was sick and dying, he delayed so that Lazarus would die. He was crying because he had empathy of all the mourners that were there, crying and grieving. He had these emotions, and it's how he dealt with these emotions that just amaze me, especially at the Last Supper. This moment finds Jesus and his closest friends on earth in a room that will become known as the Upper Room, about to celebrate their final meal together. Except the disciples still didn't understand this was their last meal with Jesus. In Luke's Gospel, we see that right before Jesus washes the disciples' feet, the disciples are arguing about which one of them is the greatest. A dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. That's Luke 22:24. Can you imagine what Jesus must have been feeling? According to John 13:1 and 2, Jesus knew that his hour had come to leave this world. He also knew that the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. So Jesus knew that his time was coming. He knew that he would be betrayed. Instead of having a beautiful last moment to eat a meal and be with his closest friends on this earth, he is stuck listening to the disciples argue about who is the greatest amongst themselves. This, of course, after 3 years of daily living, teaching, and correction that Jesus had given the disciples. This was because in those days the Passover meal had been eaten around a triclinium. A triclinium is a low coffee table height, U-shaped table. Also in those days, the master, Lord, or teacher, Jesus, would have taken a seat in the place of honor in the center of the table. Then the next highest ranking members of the group would be beside him, and so on and so forth. And then the people who were the least would be the furthest away. It's during this argument that Jesus decides to do something scandalous. So he got up from the table, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel he had around him. Can you imagine everybody's shock when Jesus gets up and begins to wash his disciples' feet in the middle of their argument? This was a big deal because in Jewish culture, the lowest servant in the household would wash the guests' feet before the meal started. Jesus understood what was going on in that room. Jesus, because of who he is, knows what is going on and what we need despite our attempts to mess things up. Sometimes it's easy to picture Jesus as this really detached person who lives up in the clouds. But that's not the Jesus we see here. He had every right to be frustrated and annoyed with his disciples. I know I would have been. But Jesus stayed in the moment with his followers. Don't miss this profound truth that comes from this revelation. Jesus is in your every moment. The Savior of this world is with you right now. Even though he was about to head into his final hours of life, Jesus was in the moment enough to stop and teach his disciples one last object lesson. One last observation from this moment with Jesus. Peter, seeing what Jesus was doing, initially refuses to let Jesus wash his feet. Jesus, who by now is after 3 years used to Peter's antics, corrects Peter by saying, "Unless I wash you, you won't belong to me." We know Jesus wasn't talking about literally washing Peter's feet, but the washing and covering of Peter's sins by Jesus' blood. Jesus was telling Peter in so many words, if you want to be part of my new kingdom, you must freely accept my gift of service and love. Yes, the same Jesus, God of the universe, creator of the world, and Lord of lords, loved you enough to die for you. It doesn't matter what you have done, or what you will do, or how far you will run. All you must do is accept the free act of love that Jesus offers you. And if you are feeling guilty or ashamed of things Peter was probably feeling in that moment when Jesus was trying to wash his feet, just remember this: Jesus loved you till the very end and will never stop loving you. Thanks.